Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market. This is our daily show from Monday to Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, 12 p.m. GMT, every day of the week, where we discuss all things to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and how to make money on the internet, sometimes via wonderful airdrops, which will casually drop tens of thousands of dollars into your hands if you hold the right NFTs. We're going to discuss all of that and a little bit more as we get into the show. Before we get there, I'm your host, Bchek. I'm joined by my legendary co-hosts, Legendary and Sammy. And just a reminder, friends, that nothing that we say here is financial advice. We don't know anything for sure. This market is insanely risky, so please do proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. With that out of the way, Legendary, how are you doing? It is Thursday. It is the 7th of March. How are you doing?
GM Jim, doing pretty great. I just need the weekend to hit again. Definitely lacking on sleep. It's been way too much stuff that's been going on and impossible to keep up with it. So I'm now down again to like 4 to 5 hours of sleep per
Damn.
night, and definitely need the weekend to recover a bit.
Yeah, me too. Someone asked me what I have on for the rest of the week, and I just said, trying to get to the weekend. Trying to get to the weekend because it was too difficult for me to think of all the things that were happening today and tomorrow, the various meetings, the various conversations, the various things we're trying to move forward on. I was just like, I know it's a lot of good stuff. Like it's fun, it's exciting, but I just need to get through. Got to get through
Yeah.
it. Sammy, how is it going for you on your side?
It's good, yeah, exactly the same boat. Just feel a bit sleep deprived, although it is Mother's Day in the UK on Sunday. So that's something, if you haven't got a card already, get some flowers and a card.
That is an absolute lifesaver. My mum actually mentioned it on the weekend and I'd forgotten it in the interim. So look, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to write it down here right now on the admin list that I always keep next to me as the show is going on. Right, got to deal with that. Sammy, have you dealt with it already?
I've got the card, yeah. Just need to write it.
Okay, not bad. Not bad at all. Decent preparation on your part. You had a little bit of a win as well, though, Sammy. Do you want to speak about the wormhole airdrop? We're going to get into more of the details in a second, but I think you've been writing a bunch of these airdrop guides for a little bit of time now. They've been doing pretty well. How did those guides help with this particular one? And yeah, how are they going?
Yeah, so I think for this particular airdrop, the one that surprised me was the Solana wallets, and I was talking to you guys just a moment ago. Just because you got a double dip from, say, using that Mayan Finance bridge from, say, ETH to Solana. So you got both those wallets became eligible, so you end up getting a double portion of the W token. But yeah, there's like a number of different protocols that you could use, whether it's Merkley or just a number of different things. So yeah, it's just trying to work out which wallets are eligible, going through the list, and yeah, hopefully it'd be a good one. I think they're trading on Wales Market for about between $2 and $3, so per W token. I think Madlads, Dig Odds, and Utes have done very well if they manage to get their Discord roles in time. So yeah, it seems like another big one.
Okay, so a lot of good points there. I think your content has been pretty helpful for people in that respect. We're going to get into more of those details, kind of explain what wormhole is, what the drop was, what the kind of breakdowns were. In fact, Sammy, before we do that, if you could take a look at the kind of core details and how they split it up, that would be helpful. But before we get there, and before we get into all the other headlines and have a bigger discussion, let's bring you the headlines from the snapshot and the price action. As always, it comes from the snapshot, which is pinned up top, goes out every day. If you feel that it brings you some value today, please do give it a like. So let's get into it. I don't know why it's blurry today. Printed it off as, well, I copied and pasted it as normal. Apologies for that. Price action, we got crypto a bit flat today compared to the previous days. Got Bitcoin at 66.7, ETH at 3.7, but Solana moving forward aggressively, up 6% at $140. I don't know if you saw, Legendary and Sammy, but there was news just before the show that a big fund, I think it was Pantera, is planning to buy a lot of the FTX Solana in bulk. So that is an interesting development. And I think we know that there's been this constant sell pressure on Solana from this FTX estate. And if that could be gotten rid of, maybe this can move quite aggressively up. Getting into the headlines, Wormhole reveals the airdrop details with Madlads, the biggest winners, 16K allocation. That token has been trading at more than $2 on Whales Market. So it could be a huge W for them. We'll get into that in a moment. Number two, Matchy starts buying $24 million worth of Bored Apes with the ApeCoin treasury funds as agreed in the proposal. Cyrus provided the context where he said Matchy's proposal to use $24 million of ApeCoin DAO's treasury to bid Bored Apes, Mutants, and Punks, and other museum-worthy art is in full effect. So it's not just going to be Bored Apes. There's going to be some other things too. 2 wallets have been funded with $4 million in Ape, and they've been market buying Bored Apes all day. Pretty massive bid for Apes when they needed it most. Interestingly, the Bored Ape price is flat, and everything else is getting completely wrecked. We're going to get into that in just a moment. The other headline from the NFT universe is that Mockaverse confirms that there will be Mocha token reserved for NFT holders. Mockaverse is up 7% to 3.9 ETH. But damn, these ETH NFTs are really struggling to hold higher prices right now. Even that seems to be a struggle. It went above 4 and kind of came a little bit further down. In terms of other floor prices, we've got CryptoPunks at 55 ETH, Bored Apes at 17.7, Mutants at 2.8, DGods down 15% at 1.9 for the first time in a long time. Captain's down 8% to 4.8. Azuki's down 9% to 3.9. Penguins down 8% to 13.6. Madlads steady, plus 2%, 192 sold. Noun's winning bid was at 6.2 ETH. Some top sales. Bored Ape got a gold Bored Ape sold for 246 ETH. Another CryptoPunk sold for 75, and a Tyler Hobbs Fidenza sold for 55 ETH. Legendary. Those are the headlines. That is the price action. Some pretty wild moves taking place across a lot of floor prices. What's your reaction to some of those before we get into the headlines?
Yeah, I get two things that I want to comment on. One of which is on the NFT downwards movement.
Yes.
I'm starting now to look a bit at Azuki elementals, seeing them trade at a 1-to-10 ratio for Azukis.
Okay.
So they're like 0.38 ETH, and they're getting like very, very cheap. And I'm like thinking, isn't that getting to a point where, from the perspective of potential token airdrops, team's been obviously announced some token airdrops for Azukis on Blast, but also potential anime token coming up. Isn't it getting to a point where it might get interesting to pick a couple up? Obviously, I'm biased as I clearly hold a bag of Azuki/Azuki elementals, but that's one of the things that I'm personally watching NFA. The second thing, because you mentioned, I'm very glad that you brought it up, is the Solana thing with Pantera, because they're structuring the deal. I know it's not the main headline, but if we maybe take 1 minute to get into it,
Sure.
they're structuring the deal in a very, very interesting way. So basically what Pantera is doing is they're launching a fundraise to buy 250 million worth of Solana. But
Okay.
they are buying that at a discount. They will pay $60 per Solana, or the investors. However, in return, they are agreeing on a 4-year vesting, at least 4-year vesting for that. So it's interesting to see how long-term they're positioning.
You've cut out for me.
Am I back?
You're okay for me. I think B's frozen.
I think B, you're frozen, but Jack, can you hear me? Jack is speaking, but I can't hear him either. I think it's the internet.
There he is. He's back.
Oh yeah, wonderful.
Oh, you're back.
Yeah, you froze for us. Anyhow, so what was the last thing that Jack?
Okay.
Maybe you could say what was the last thing that you heard real quick.
That Azuki is going to be a mega giga pump, and that we're all going to get Jenny Wealth if we buy one.
Oh, wonderful! Okay. The NFA part.
Okay, so yeah, start from the Pantera stuff. It's not part of the headlines, but we have said Sol's moved up today, and we want to talk about Pantera considering or putting forward this offer to buy a significant portion of the Solana from the FTX estate. So let's go from there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the way that Pantera is structuring the deal is very interesting. They're raising funds to buy 250 mil worth of Solana. However, they are buying it at $60, so like at a significant discount to the $140 that Sol is trading at right now. However, in return, the investors are agreeing to at least 4 years of vesting for the token. which kind of shows you like the very, very long-term perspective that Pantera would take on their Solana position.
Sure.
And one interesting thing to note in Pantera's pitch deck is the numbers on the FTX estate that they've been sharing. As a reminder, that FTX estate is holding 41.1 million Solana, approximately 5.4 billion, which is 10% of the total supply of the token.
God, that's actually outrageous, isn't it? Like, it's so much. So I guess, are they proposing to buy all of it? Just
They're raising, according to Cointelegraph, they're raising 250 mil. So that's like 5% of the total amount. But maybe that raise could get way more interest in those 250 mil. So we will have to wait and see how it plays out and how much market interest it will garner.
Okay. And I appreciate I'm asking you these questions. You might not know the answer to them yet, but I'm assuming from the way that you just described it, so the investors would be vesting over a period of time. They're not going to take all of those and be able to market dump it 2x the price that they're buying them for, obviously. But I guess the FTX estate also don't hold all of those tokens right now either. Is there still a vesting period that they're under from their original agreement? Do you know that?
That I couldn't find on that short notice.
Okay, interesting. Well, maybe if you like have a read of the article, and if you could send me the article as well, so I could have a read, because I think that's really big news, and that's just come out in the past few minutes before we've gone live, so we haven't had a chance to look at that. But let's hear some thoughts from Funky and Jack for a moment, and we'll do a little bit of investigation before we hit the rest of the news as planned. I did actually have planned a little segment on Solana and people talking about it, so we're going to be getting into that a little bit more in just a moment. Funky, your hand is raised. Welcome to the stage, my friend. What are your thoughts on Solana price action or anything else we've started with the show today?
GM, my friends, $60 Sol. How do I get in line? Because I
Yeah.
would love to be part of that fund, right? I mean, that seems like if this is the new ETH, that seems dirt cheap to get in. I'm sure I'm not going to be allowed, but just wanted to give a shout out to Sammy, because I wouldn't have qualified for the wormhole airdrop in so many wallets if I had not done his airdrop looping strategy back during Christmas break. So I want to give him some love. And also, just for people who are claiming the wormhole airdrop, it only gives you the option of a Phantom or a backpack wallet. I had done that on Soulflare. So what I would do is just make sure you take your private key, put it into a Phantom or the backpack, and recreate that wallet, because otherwise you won't be able to claim it. And also a little bit of lost porn, once again, crying my eyes out for having given away the bad kid, because apparently they got 10,000 wormhole tokens. So they were one of the NFTs getting airdropped from wormhole as well.
Fair enough. Always enjoy a bit of funky lost porn, our favorite type of lost porn. Yep, very good, very helpful perspective there. Yeah, shout out Sammy, quality content we're producing here. Jack, your hand is raised. Did someone else want to come in?
Yeah, me. Sorry, Jack, for cutting the line. I found the data on the FTX estate.
Oh, amazing.
They are on a vesting schedule where tokens are released in increments every 30 days until 2027. And then an additional 34.5 million Sol is said to be gradually unlocked every month until 2028. So they're on a fucking long vesting schedule.
Okay, so God, and you said how much of the supply was it? Like 10% of the whole supply?
10% of the whole supply.
Interesting. Okay, so I mean that kind of gives a little bit of perspective of the kind of sell pressure that Solana will be under in perpetuity for a while. But I guess the idea is that by taking some of that off right now and by believing in it a bit more, which is what Pantera, I guess, are suggesting that they would do, it might free it up a little bit.
At least you're delaying the problem, right? You're buying tokens from the FTX estate that are unlocking now and throwing them into a different vesting by Pantera that is now an additional 4 years. So you're basically locking tokens that just got unlocked from FTX and locking them in the Pantera structure. So you're like delaying the problem in the hopes that in 4 years Solana is that big that number doesn't really make a dent.
And then what we can do once we've made it after this cycle is we go to Pantera and say, well, we'll buy it off you for 80, and then we'll do it on a 6-year vesting schedule. And then someone can buy it off us at 100.
We'll
and
sell
we
it to
just,
BlackRock for the ETF in 2028.
yeah, exactly. Just continuously kick the can down the road. Just Solana will be vesting forever. Jack, your hand is raised. Welcome to the stage, my friend. What are your thoughts on the Solana ecosystem and how this conversation has started today?
Yeah, I think the big one for me is definitely Wormhole. I've seen a lot of controversy on the timeline. I know firsthand that they've screwed up the Discord allow list or what token drop based on the people who joined on the DGOD side within the first like 2 days. I think they did like a 48-hour. Like if you get in and you like get your right rolls in, then they were going to do a drop. That seems to have not gone to plan, and people have lost out there. It seems to be very stringent on only the people who've moved their utes like through and kept them all in the same wallet have got a drop. So even people who've held it but just haven't kept them in the same wallet are taking a big L on that one. That's interesting to me. I do wonder where that all goes in the end. Hilariously, someone has already whipped up a competing token, which is Wormhole. Literally just Wormhole with an L at the front, which is already done like a 3x from when it was launched this morning. DGods are getting behind that quite heavily after taking the big L on that. It does seem to just be meme coin season at the moment, with ETH sort of bleeding, with even ordinals bleeding to some extent. We're definitely seeing that cycle like lead into meme coins at the moment. They seem to be the big winner right now.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair point on the airdrop. So let's actually just get into that, and we're going to kind of discuss the whole Sol ecosystem as a consequence of this airdrop, because people have been talking about the kind of wealth effect that will come from not just Wormhole, but a whole variety of airdrops that are scheduled for Solana. We saw Camino tweet yesterday quite presumptuously that, you know, that something could be coming today, or some type of announcement could be coming today. We're going to discuss those options and where you should be looking, or where you might want to look for the next airdrops on Solana and the significance of that. But before we get there, just Legendary, if you just want to set it up, like, what was Wormhole? What did you need to do? Why is it worth so much? I think that's one of the first questions, and maybe the answer is we don't know why it's worth so much. But let's go there first. Then we'll talk a little bit about the FUD, as Jack mentioned. We've been speaking about on the show how the threshold to get hold of these things are getting higher and higher and higher. You can't just hold an asset. You can't just use it. You got to jump in a Discord. You got to get a role. You got to do some random tasks. We'll discuss a little bit of that in just a moment too.
Yeah, absolutely. First and foremost, Wormhole is a bridge that works across alternative layer 1 solutions, not only on the EVM side of things. You can bridge to Solana. Originally, you could actually bridge to Terra when Terra was still a thing. So it is worth to actually check your Terra wallets. Quick side note on that, if you still have them. They are not supporting the old Terra Station wallets. You have to re-import them into Kepler and check from there. Very same for Aptos and Sui. Even one transaction there was enough to qualify you. So definitely, if you've played around with those, before we get into maybe more of the technical stuff, make sure to check all of those wallets, because I'm pretty sure that people will have hidden W's in there that they're not aware of. In terms of the airdrop, we are seeing that a bit more than 6% of the W supply has been allocated from the community and launch category in connection with the airdrop. I think it is almost 400k wallets. Yes, it's 397,000 wallets that are qualifying for on-chain activity for users who, well, just used the Wormhole bridge on one of the 30 plus blockchains that it is supporting. Various NFT communities that also get it, Wormhole Discord users, the Monad community, the top 10,000 Pyth stakers. So quite a broad series of eligibility criteria to qualify for that. To your last question, why that thing is worth so much, I think it's important to note that Whales market did go down a bit, quite a bit actually. We are down to average asks of 140 and average bids of 110. So basically cut the last number that we were talking about on the timeline yesterday in half. Still, I think that would put it at what, like a $14 billion, $10 billion valuation in depending if you look at the bid or ask side of things, which is quite a lot. I mean, yes, it's an amazing bridge, but after all, it is just a bridge. Counterpoint to that would be the Utes DGOTS campaign that said it was always more than just a bridge. So I guess we will have to wait and see. But it is a bull market. Infrastructure projects have always been valued at very, very absurd FDV prices. FDV is not always the right number to look at, something we talked about on the show. So I think we just have to accept that even at $1, the 10 billion FDV is just a crazy high number at the end of the day.
Yeah, very fair evaluation. I think that's helpful to kind of set things up. Wanted to share El Hombre's comment on the YouTube chat. He said Wormhole was a reminder for the potential strength of airdrop plus NFT snowballing. For him, it started with Jito's drop, bought a Madlad as a consequence, and therefore got the Dimension drop, and now got the Wormhole drop too. Definite synergy there between these protocols who need to drop something and prominent NFT communities. Interesting to discuss, though. We saw Frank DGODS share this tweet, which I'm about to read. I'll share it for the people who are watching in as well. Feeling a little bit confused, and maybe this is in response to Jack's point that maybe it wasn't necessarily done in the perfect way, and maybe also the point that I've been talking about the last few weeks on the show, that these NFT communities need to be careful that it's not them who are being farmed. Like, yes, you might get some gold at the end of the rainbow by partnering up with these people who are going to drop you some tokens, but you're also going to be there's going to be a mutual back and forth, right? Like, they're using you for something. That's why you're getting that allocation. And so he said, I get that airdrops are free money, but there's something weird about talking about another team's coin as free money. It just assumes that people are going to sell it immediately. Ideally, communities and tokens align around long-term visions together, building alignment and genuine long-term holders. If the future of the airdrop meta continues to be NFT holders flexing how they're going to dump their bags on holders of other NFTs, then this meta definitely will not last, because nobody will want to buy those bags. Interesting perspective. I've got some thoughts there. I want to go to you straight away, Sammy, to get your reflections on that. Can that airdrop, can this type of thing continue if only a few communities get chosen and then everyone else needs to buy it off them? But will people start refusing and there be a price impact as a consequence?
I think it comes down to the partnerships that those NFT communities make, because if they align the interests, like I think what Frank was trying to do here, then potentially there will be some community members that will hold the token long term. I think Wormhole's value proposition is you've effectively got this interoperability layer.
I've lost you, Sammy.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we've lost Sammy.
Okay. All right, they're back. This is annoying. I think this might be my internet connection. Sammy, you're back.
I'm back. Yeah, so I think it's the interoperability layer. Like, the value of that particular omni-chain tech stuff is that you're kind of connecting all these blockchains, so you have that network effect. And maybe Frank's vision for Utes or DGODS isn't just a single chain, it is multi-chain. There will be more stuff built out. So, and maybe there'll be more partnerships with Wormhole in the future. That might be something that he's alluding to. So I guess if the community members see value in that long term and they intend to be with the project long term, then they're likely to hold. But unless, I guess, either party gives the community more reason to believe that, then I think people will start to take profits. And it is essentially like, at the end of the day, NFTs are non-fungible. You can't just sell part of it. You can take out a loan against it or something like that, but you've got to repay it. And I think having these liquidity events where you get airdrop tokens, where you can sell a portion, that's not a bad thing. Whether you sell the whole bag, I don't know. But yeah, I think it depends on your own individual interests as a holder. There will be people that would have just bought the NFT to get the airdrop and then dump both. Sure. There's loads of different market participants. I just hope that the actual core holders of that NFT do see value in it and they get value from it in terms of the long-term value.
Yeah, fair enough. Shout out to Zeit in the comments. This was their perspective. In Web 2, it is impossible for anyone to be rewarded this way at all in the first place. Negative outlook on doing a few tasks or fulfilling requirements to receive money is a spoiled Web 3 attitude. Maybe we think that even just doing one or two things is too much of a big deal. Just give us the damn money. I actually sympathize with that idea. I think doing a couple of things should be perfectly reasonable for a few $1,000s, at least a few tens of $1,000s. Legendary, you said you wanted to come in here. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, on Frank's post, I think like from a PR perspective, you almost have to post something like that. If you see all of a good part of the community posting on the timeline that they will sell the token, then you have the other part of the community who has been holding those JPEGs and is just not eligible, and it's not clear if this is an issue that's going to be addressed and fixed. Like, for example, I'm not eligible in any of my youth holdings because I moved them to a different ledger.
Okay.
And you might call it entitlement, but from the perspective that you've been holding that asset and you've just moved it to a more secure place, then to not be eligible, that's a bit annoying. And I think Fubar put out a post that I quite resonated with. Fubar said, modern airdrops be like used product, 1 token. Restake 20 cents of a scam Celestia fork, 10 tokens. Joined Discord channel for competitor between 2 and 3 a.m. UTC 3 weeks ago and responded to announcement tweet with rainbow emoji, 1,000 tokens.
Yeah, look, I think there's a reasonable discussion to be had about like, look, how do you weight these things? You obviously want to try to incentivize a variety of behaviors, a variety of participants. Who gets the most? Like it's going to be a hard question to answer. And maybe sometimes people don't get it right, but I guess they're experimenting. And maybe this whole NFT inclusion is an experiment in itself, right? Like that didn't necessarily exist before. In 2021, when CryptoPunks was the main NFT, they just seemed to get stuff. They just got stuff for free. That was like iteration 1 of this meta of being rewarded for holding a particular NFT. And now things are going to get a bit more sophisticated. So we'll just have to see how that continues to go. I want to keep us moving along because there's one more thing to talk about Solana before we get into the proper headlines of the show. So apologies, Jack, we've got to keep it moving, but I think this will be a helpful one for everyone. I'm going to bring up one of Funky's points that he made in the comments in a second too, but want to look forward on Solana because the thesis is that there's a lot of stuff to look forward to. So Santiago wrote here, the wealth effect in Solana, and I'm sharing this for the people watching in, but I'll read it out for those who are not. The wealth effect in Solana from the wave of airdrops is just getting started. There's at least another 6 projects that will airdrop to the community. Realistically, it's probably more, but these are 6 quality ones that he has mentioned. It's the best chain for retail, low fees, great apps like Tensor and Jupiter, so that new wealth finds its way to NFTs and memes. That's the thesis with a hat. So we have had already Jito, Jupiter, Pith. Wormhole obviously is not actually out yet, so that is to come, though we've got those details. We've got Camino, we've got MarginFi, we've got Tensor, we've got Drift, we've got Parcel. If you haven't interacted with any of those things yet or are interested in doing so, I'd recommend, well, following all of us because we all share information about that. Sammy does have a particular, I think it's a document or a newsletter where he's sharing that stuff, so definitely check that out as well. But Legendary, do you have any reflections on like the rest of these opportunities and the extent to which this means there's going to be some significant wealth effect still to come on Solana? Because obviously people have gone from $8 Sol to $140 Sol, and there's already a wealth effect, right? But is this something that's going to be in addition to that, or is that just like hopium?
I think maybe wealth effect is too strong of a term because at the end of the day, most people are not using that platforms in an airdrop efficient way. They don't have the volume of capital requirements. If it's definitely, it will be good airdrops, don't get me wrong, and W is a very good example for that. But a wealth effect compared like to the overall user base and to the money and TVL that's already there is too strong of a statement. I think it's going to be very, very top heavy. The rich getting rich, if you want to put it like that, the farmers getting richer. But that's definitely not 90% who are randomly going to wake up and be like, oh, I have multiple 5 figures on top of it because I did deposit $100 on Parcel. That's just not the reality of things. And on top of that, you have the ETH airdrop farmers with history and bags that also moved into the Solana game and are farming them. I mean, we are doing that essentially too. So I think wealth effect is too strong of a term, but generally, obviously, nothing against that thesis, and those airdrops will be good. And Magic Eden is a top tier one that should also be added to that list.
Yes.
But it won't impact everyone to like such a significant extent that I'd call it the wealth effect.
Very fair enough. One of the final things I want to make there, just to share some other opportunities with people, something where our attention has been going as well. This is a tweet from Wrong User. And if you are struggling with any of these things, put a comment in the show and maybe ask about one specifically. Maybe someone will be able to get back to you or to what you need to do in order to participate. One of us will do that either during the show or after. We've got Camino announced for today. We think there are other protocols like Tensor, Parcel, Shuffle dropping soon. Legendary mentioned Shuffle 2 days ago. Sync is dropping this month. Then you've also got the Ethereum stuff, right? You've got ZK Sync, you've got Layer 0, Akubo, which is on ZK Sync, on Starknet, MarginFi, Ambient, which is actually on Blast and other places. A lot of these things are cross-chain now. That's the interesting thing about it. It's not just like, oh, this is on ETH, this is on Solana. It's like Ambient, I was using that on Blast yesterday or 2 days ago. I've also used it on some other chain. I can't even remember anymore. You've also got Eigenlayer, you've got Blast itself. So this is just like a huge things are really coalescing towards these various opportunities as we move throughout the year. So hopefully you can participate in those. Just wanted to bring those to your attention, not just talk about the ones that have happened, but give you an idea of where these things might move in the future. Let's get into one of the headlines then. So we've talked about Wormhole. We've spoken about the various other opportunities that we might be looking at. What about this news about Matchy buying $24 million worth of Apes Legendary with the ApeCoin treasury funds as agreed in the proposal? Maybe one of us can change the headline. In fact, maybe we'll go to Sammy first. So Legendary, you can make the adjustment. Sammy, what do you think about these big buys coming in? And actually, what do you think about the ETH NFT price action as well as a consequence? Like all of these buys have come in, and that's just about keeping the Bored Apes like where they are. They're flat on the day despite this buying starting. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, when Matchy buys stuff, I don't know if it's going to be a long-term hold. He's obviously big into the ape ecosystem.
But this is from the ApeCoin treasury funds, remember? So this is the proposal which they made to buy a significant amount, which included, I'll just have the details there from Cyrus, to bid Bored Apes, Mutant Apes, Punks, and other museum-worthy art. So that's starting. So this is not for him personally to kind of farm the blur points. This is for him to push forward the narrative that these are like culturally and historically significant digital artifacts.
Yeah, I think they have like some sort of provenance because they were one of the first 10K PFP collections on ETH that did pretty well. I think CryptoPunks is probably always going to hold that, and the likes of having those in which was it LACMA or some other sort of renowned traditional art establishments. I think that's pretty good. I think maybe we'll see Ape sell at Sotheby's and Christie's fairly soon. I think getting them in there is the first stepping stone. But I don't know. I think personally, I just don't see them as the same as CryptoPunks. I think there's something about the pixelated art with CryptoPunks that resonates with the degen back in the day, or like the early ETH experimenters. I think Bored Apes was slightly different, and I think it probably has a different path. But I don't know if it was necessarily going to follow that same direction. I could be proven wrong. It just seems like a pretty difficult path to tread.
Yeah, fair enough. I actually think I'm going to come to Legendary on this in a second. Like, I actually think that they definitely are very significant in the sense that, I mean, CryptoPunks definitely paved the way. Everything has been inspired by that, but it was the first other project that injected so much excitement and so much excitement and velocity into the NFT market, and it gave people the impetus from a business perspective to think, okay, fine, like CryptoPunks are valuable from a historical perspective, from a kind of provenance perspective, but it gave people the impetus to say, like, no, we can actually build a brand or a gaming company or whatever. We can actually build something and achieve that type of valuation via this method. Whereas CryptoPunks were kind of, they were going to accrue value anyway. So I think that they're kind of different in that respect. Legendary would love to hit. Sorry.
So yeah, just going back in on that, I agree with you from that standpoint. It could be seen as a good source of like historical provenance from an IP perspective. Yeah, so I think from that standpoint, if that's the narrative or the direction they're trying to push it, then I think go for it. But I don't think it would follow the same direction as CryptoPunks with the kind of standalone art piece.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's fair. Legendary, we've got some hands raised as well. I want to hear from them if we can in just a moment. But Legendary, so this buying is starting, and I'm just looking at the rest of the market, which is absolutely wrecked in terms of the ETH NFTs. In fact, there's been a pullback on the Bitcoin side as well, which I'll just touch on in a moment. But what are your thoughts here? First on the matchy buys, kind of keeping Bored Apes above water. They're up just 1% at 17.9 ETH, which is low compared to there were. But just for everyone's context and just to recap, Pudgy Penguins are down 9% at 13.4 from their highs of whatever it was, like 21. Mutant Apes are down another 2.5%, down at 2.7. Azukis are down 8% underneath 4 for the first time in a while again. We also have Lil Pudgies at 1.17. D-God's down almost 20% at 1.8. Captain's down 10% at 4.6. Moonbirds down 7% at 0.88. We've moved that off the snapshot now and haven't been reporting on their price. Suddenly it seems to have almost evaporated. CloneX down 10% again at 0.7. Doodle's down 7% at 1.7. I could go on. I'll stop there though. Legendary, what are your thoughts here?
Look, I think the timing for Machi's proposal, for the execution of it proposal, obviously is way older, is perfect, couldn't be better. I remember the main discussion on the timeline back then was, why do we need apes in museums? CryptoPunks belong in a museum, and people kind of kept forgetting that CryptoPunks didn't wake up one day and decided, I'm going to be in a museum. It's people who got them in there with the network, with the relations that they had. Same with work of prominent artists. Look at Rafik Anadol being at Centre Pompidou. That's a prominent holder's work, to use connections and network to get them in there. So it takes a proactive effort if you want to accelerate the timeline, not wait like for 50 years until a museum decides, oh, the first Ether rock is worth putting up there because it has historical relevance. So A, that, and B, given the fact that we've seen like this move to ordinals, and yes, there is a correction there, as you just perfectly said, and moving away from the complexity of NFTs now being airdrop vehicles, etc., and just like to the purity of, okay, this is the JPEG community art, whatever you want to call it. That's it for now. I think is actually a very good step for the apes, especially in an environment where also everyone is dunking on Yuga for their gaming side of things, and at least having that cultural focus is very good. Because if you look at the whole Yuga ecosystem, punks are the ones which are doing best, and they're also the asset that Yuga is touching the least, especially from the gaming side of things. So I think the timing for the execution of the proposal, given all those factors I just mentioned, couldn't be better.
Okay. Very fair points. I think, Sammy, you wanted to come in here.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about a reduction in a lot of these ETH projects as well. I don't think that if you look at it in USD terms, the drop isn't as severe. I mean, ETH's pumped 25% in 2 weeks. So like realistically, like the net drop is probably like 5% or something. Sure. Which isn't that bad for a fairly illiquid asset class that could be quite volatile. So I think we see this sea of red, but it's a sea of red in ETH. Actually, in USD, it might be a little bit different. And maybe the scene isn't as bad as we think. And actually, once ETH stops ripping, historically, we've seen kind of, if it starts to end up in that trending range, then maybe we'll see Bored Apes and these other projects start to run again.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. Want to try to hear some other thoughts here. Then we're going to get to the Web3 roundup to get you up to speed with everything else that's been happening in the Web3 ecosystem, and then we're going to conclude with a little bit of Solana thoughts and Mockaverse information. So, Jack, your hand is raised. What are your thoughts here, my friend?
Yeah, I think it's time horizon, but like for me, I'm 2021. Like that was sort of when I discovered NFTs, and I wouldn't have discovered them without Bored Apes. And I think the historical relevance of that and like the success that they had, and they basically started the boom. Like CryptoPunks forever, the narrative is cemented, but the idea that Bored Apes doesn't have its own like just pure provenance in a sense. I actually think it does. And
I
you
agree.
mentioned, it's like the first one that was also a business, and that's an element of it too. But yeah, I just think when you look at NFTs with a long enough time horizon, and you say what fundamentally started this ecosystem, if it is going to be a success long term, the idea that Bored Apes are really the pinnacle of it all. I find that like really that would be really surprising to me if we look at that in like 5-10 years, and that isn't exactly the case.
Very fair points. I agree with you. I think that there's something very significant there, something very that really ignited the whole market in general. So definitely something culturally significant. I agree with you there. Tiro, welcome to the stage, my friend. We want to get into the Web3 roundup in just a moment. So one concluding point here from you, please.
Sure, be very quick. So you're talking about Maki and the AIP that he put up to buy 24 million worth of apes, and he has already talked about in spaces, and I believe with when they talked about Daniel Allegre leaving, he spoke up on that stage and saying, "Hey, I'd love to gift out Bored Apes to people that are influencers and that are people that'll build the community up." And I think the AIP plan needs a second step a little bit to rebuild some of the amazing apes and get the apes in the hands of loyal holders that understand and know what the apes mean. And I want to see them rise again. Obviously, I want to see all NFTs rise. And I think Yuga needs a little bit of evaluation in how they're doing things and their comms. And they're obviously moved a lot of people around within their team. And it's going to take some time for them to build synergy and create a plan of action to get them going again. But I think they could do it, and they have a war chest of funds. So I hope they could do it. I'm really excited to see what they do, and I hope Maki uses or the AIP is used in a way to create an ambassador program, so you could like hold the ape, like look at people that are in the Web3 world that are doing good things and they're promoting awesome things, and hey, you have to hold this for a year.
Yeah. Interesting
Stuff
point.
like that. Just be smart. Just like, be innovative with it and get loyal holders and build that community back up, because it's an awesome community and there's a lot of great people there. So let's highlight them.
Definitely.
So that's my point. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely agree with that. I my suspicion would be that that would be something that would need to go back to the DAO, and they'd need to ask again in order to flesh that plan out, because I think anyone can correct me if I'm wrong. If you've read the AIP, I read it a while ago, that this is like specifically to get these particular apes into culturally relevant institutions or those types of things. I think the idea or the concept of getting it into the hands of other influential people is a smart idea too. Everyone seems to want to try to roll out an ambassador program as well. So that does seem something wise to have on their radar. And the broader point I think you were making, I think is fair too, which is something needs like a rejig, like a realignment, a readjustment to ignite that whole ecosystem again. Because as you said, there are a lot of good people in there and a lot of good stuff to work with, a lot of good ingredients. So let's see how they continue with that. We're going to get into the Mockaverse news in just a moment. But before we get there, let's do the Web3 roundup from the snapshot, as always, which is pinned up top to get you up to speed with everything else that's been happening in the space in the last 24 hours. A few other interesting things that you will almost certainly not have caught. First, Madlads Exchange Backpack announced its first snapshot on March the 18th for Exchange preseason. I don't know what that means, but they seem to be getting a lot of good things. Kind of want to find out what that means and participate somehow. Number 2, largest Bitcoin inscription by block size, the Runestone, is up for auction with a bid at $17,000. This is one of only 7 ordinal inscriptions larger than 400,000 kilobytes and was created in collaboration with Ordinals bot and Marathon Digital Holdings. The upcoming Runestone airdrop will see over 112,000 eligible Bitcoin addresses receive a Runestone ordinal inscription. A lot of anticipation about this, a lot of excitement over on the ordinal side. Next, I thought this was very interesting. Imaginary Ones announces there will be no community presale. NFT holders to receive greater share of the bubble token. Interesting approach. We see obviously lots and lots of people. The market is hot right now for investment. You can people are throwing money all over the place, but they have just taken the route where no, we're not going to. And in their words, they said we're not going to extract anything more from our community. We're just going to increase the allocation to the NFT holders. So that's interesting to note, that approach. Next, Timpers announces Magic Eden drop coming later today. That's pretty fun. Bangers on Bitcoin reaches a 0.07 Bitcoin floor after minting at 0.01. Those low unit Bitcoin ordinals just almost always move, which is pretty fun to see. And then finally, Shrapnel changes its token schedule to reduce the Shrap schedule to unlock in April 2024 by 75%. Not sure what the implications of that. I think investors would not be particularly happy of people changing unlocks as they go, but that is the situation that they find themselves in. Legendary, that is the Web3 roundup. Those are some of the other headlines. Anything catching your attention before we get into the Mochaverse news?
I like the move by Imaginary Ones. I think it's pretty cool to do it like that.
Is that because you're an Imaginary Ones NFT holder?
It's because I'm a bag holder. Yes, very happy, but I also think
I actually think it's interesting though as well, right?
It's interesting because it's counteracting the meta of having pre-sales that people farm for meme or Pixelmon. Obviously, also a Pixelmon ambassador, so I can have an opinion on both, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's interesting to do it like that and kind of counteract the meta. Shrapnel, that we see more and more often, like last minute changes of tokenomics. Same with Starknet. I find that I'm not invested in Shrapnel in any form, but I'd find that from an investor's perspective, very, very annoying to have last minute changes like that.
I completely agree. Like, this is not acceptable. And I would probably argue, without knowing the exact agreements or what is written down, as a former lawyer, I mean, the only way you can do this legally, if you've literally written in an agreement that this is subject to change, including times after that,
a lot of draft agreements have that default clause in there.
But
terms can be changed.
But does it include? Because I mean, I think to some degree there's some flexibility pre-launch. It's like, look, we might come back to you and say we have to change, but is there no like concrete date after which it can't be changed? Because otherwise you can get to a date 50% of your vesting's been done, and then they want to decide like, actually we don't want to we want to delay it at some point. Like, are those really the terms from what you've seen?
I don't think that most clauses reference post-launch in there, but it would be very interesting to have a look at that from a legal perspective, because you're right. In theory, then you could be like, okay, you unlocked your first portion, the rest has now 100-year cliff attached to it, and you will basically never get it. Not that Shrapnel is doing that, but in theory, you could also argue and do that and completely screw everyone if that were to be the case, following the same logic.
Yeah, like just as I mean, the law tends to follow common sense 9 times out of 10. So I'm not familiar with these documents. I've been reading them recently a little bit, but my intuition as a former lawyer would be there should be some there should be some way to distinguish between the period of time pre-launch where you might need a bit of flexibility, you might need to have an opportunity to communicate with your investors that we need to make some adjustments, and then post-launch where, well, the token's are live, everything's should be set in stone by then. You can't just keep turning the clock back and changing, messing around with people's investments. So very interesting stuff there. Let's get into the Mochaverse one, because I think there's also some interesting stuff going on here. Sammy is a Mochaverse ambassador, so it'd be great to hear his perspective on this too. And remember, this is one of the only tokens that is surviving in the ETH market, but struggling to do so. I think it's up about 7% in the last 24 hours on this announcement. They said, Mockaverse said, "Happy birthday to me, the Mocha fam, and those who are supporting us along the journey." They've gone from 8,888 mockers to close to 1 million mocker IDs. We're expanding the network every day, onboarding Web2 and Web3 partners and users, leading to net positive value creation for NFT holders, mocker ID users, and the Mockaverse partner network. Mocha NFT holders, we're lucky and grateful to have you as our co-founders in the past year to supercharge mockalization. As a token of appreciation, Mocha has been reserved for our NFT holders. On behalf of the Mocha Foundation as a launch partner, each NFT will be allocated a certain amount. I think everyone's kind of known this already for a long period of time, but for some reason, the market is just trending down. And every time one of these announcements comes up, it just like goes up again, and then it slowly trends down again. So that's how the market is reacting to these type of announcements. But I had a couple of interesting questions specific about Mockaverse for Sammy, given that he's an ambassador for Mockaverse at the moment. Is that first thing is, why do you think, like, is there a significant increase in value of this network or the token potentially, or the NFTs, when they've gone about this by having these NFTs and building this whole Mocha ID infrastructure out at the same time, this whole Mocha community? So yes, there's 8,888 NFTs themselves, but there are a million, close to 1 million Mocha IDs of people who can kind of interact. Do you see like significant value in that whole ecosystem that's been built out?
Yeah, I mean, so the NFTs themselves, I'd probably look at them as partners or shareholders within that Mockaverse ecosystem, and that's kind of the position that they're putting them in. So with that in mind, like, you're going to want to reward those probably the most. So I don't know the tokenomics. I don't know the specifics about that. They keep a very tight, close knit on what's going on there. Sure. But based on the research that I've done through that ecosystem and the partnership activations that they're rolling out, like the Mocha ID specifically is, the more active you are in the ecosystem, so the more realm points that you accumulate, you're probably going to be rewarded. Ultimately, that will come through to the Mocha token. And then there'll be other stuff coming down the line, which I can't talk about yet. But like, I think there's a number of things that will drive value to that ecosystem. And you touched on the infrastructure element, and we've already seen the likes of Wormhole potentially come out the gate at between a 10 and 20 billion valuation. So I think, like, could you see Mocha coming out around about the same? I don't think it's unreasonable. Like, Animoca Brands has its fingers in so many gaming pies, and if Web3 gaming is going to be the next big thing, I think personally it's going to effectively be a Web3 gaming index. Like, the infrastructure they build out through the social element as well, so the on-chain social ID, like having that and then accruing value to that ID at Mocha ID through participation. So going on these missions, earning realm points, participating in Shard Rush, that's all going to come together. And those are going to be the people that they're going to reward with these Mocha tokens, whether it's through, if you don't have cash and you have that Mocha ID, then that's one route. But if you do have money and you can buy into the Mocha token and become like a formal partner, then that's going to be another equally as rewarding play as well. So I think there's a couple of elements.
Okay, I wanted to make a point on this, and we're coming to the conclusion of the show. It's a quick one. I want to hear Legendary's quick take on it. I think there is significant value for the company. I don't know if this gets put across to the NFT holders, but I don't know any community that is doing as good a job at like tracking and gathering the data on their community than the Mockaverse ecosystem at the moment. So I am a holder in this, and in order to like earn some of these realm points or to get some of these XP things or whatever the points they are, you got to like perform these various tasks, right? And you've got these Mocha ID holders as well who are all going around performing these tasks. And so they're just building up all of this on-chain data of not only their NFT holders, but also these Mocha ID holders. And I don't know if there's anyone else out there who's doing it at the scale that they're doing it. I know people are trying to do it, but at that scale, when there's that kind of numbers. Legendary, do you have any reflection on that in terms from the data perspective? I don't think it's something anyone's really spoken about that much. How valuable is that data to a Web3 company? Is that like going to be one of the primary reasons they're doing it? What are your thoughts there as we come to the conclusion of the show?
It's insanely valuable. Obviously, blockchain is open and you can build like a transactional profile of every wallet address, but you don't know a lot about those people behaviorally and how they interact with dApps and what they do with games, etc. That's a very valuable part of it. And I feel like that data layer is often forgotten. If you look at something like Vulkan or other Discord authenticators for your NFT holdings, like those are one of the few tools where people are happy to input all of their wallets. And those tools know associated wallets that you maybe kept completely separate by not having transactions going back and forth with them. So there are many projects where I feel like that are sitting on a wealth of data that people might not be aware at the first sight. And Mocha definitely, with that loyalty ecosystem that they're building, is collecting insane amounts of data that are very valuable.
Yeah, that's one of my key reflections. Very interesting to see how they continue to do that, because I'm just not aware of anyone else doing it at the scale they are doing it. But as I said, guys, we have reached the end of the show. We are just a couple minutes over, but I hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you're new here, we do this every single day, Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern time, 12 p.m. GMT for 1 hour. We cover everything to do with the NFT market, a little bit of the crypto market, and whatever other ways we are intending to make a few more dollars on the side. Hope you enjoyed the show. Thank you to my co-hosts, Legendary, Sammy. Thank you to all our other speakers, Jack, Oxy, Funky, T-Ro, and anyone else who contributed. And thank you to everyone in the audience for joining us again. We will, of course, be back tomorrow. Have a wonderful day, and we will see you then. Bye-bye.